Oh, welcome everyone who is going to be listening to this recording. We don't have anyone joining us for a purpose because we just want to talk among ourselves first. And I'm just so pleased to be interviewing two nurses who have amazing experience behind them. And Lyn McCright and Teresa Walding, I'm going to have to read what I have about them because it's pretty extensive. I've never seen so many initials after someone's name, Lynn. I've got MPH, APRN, AGNP, AHN-BC. I'm not sure if that means British Columbia. And then we have HWNC-BC. And Lynn is a board certified health and wellness nurse coach. And there are initials for that too, AHNCC. And you know, anybody who knows about initials, it requires coursework, it requires certification. You don't just get letters after your name. So, wow. And Lyn McCright is the founder, owner, and director of the Advancing Nurse Coaching Program. Her MPH in nursing is from the University of Minnesota and her BSN from the University of Arkansas. Lynn is an adult and gerontological nurse practitioner and a clinical specialist in community health nursing. She began coaching in 1986. Teaching resilience based on the principles of the resilience paradigm in her private practice in Monterey, California. The principles being the three principles of mind, thought, and consciousness. She later founded Health Consulting and Lyn McCright Consulting in Texas. Lyn's nursing experience includes working as a medical surgical staff nurse and in ICU, CCU, nursing education, public health, and as a supervisor in home health and hospice. She has been a clinical instructor in the School of Nursing at the University of Texas at El Paso. Wow. And Teresa Walding, also several initials, BSN, RN, NC-BC. Teresa is Associate Director of the Advancing Nurse Coaching Program and a board certified nurse coach. Teresa earned her Bachelor of Science in Nursing in 1993 from Boise State University. She is a content expert on the resilience principles, speaking at conferences, retreats, podcasts, and radio programs. I am so pleased to welcome Lynn and Teresa. And I think Teresa is going to be joining us a little later. But Lynn, I can't wait to hear, where should we start? We had already started before I turned on the record button, but where do you want to start now?
I think, well, what I want to say is that Florence Nightingale told us in the year 1870 that it would be 150 years before people would see the kind of nursing that she envisioned. Well, that year was 2020, and the World Health Organization declared it to be the year of the nurse and midwife, just as they declared the year 2021 to be the year of the nurse and midwife. So we actually had two internationally acclaimed years of the nurse and midwife. Well, how does it happen that this transformation is taking place now? We've known for a long time that change was coming. In fact, my state, the state of Texas, did a study about 7 years ago, and what they found was that of all of the 215 schools of nursing in the state of Texas, the average length of stay in the profession was only 18 months. So,
Okay.
Yeah, women, the nurses would go for a year, 2 years to 4 years program and stay only 18 months in the profession. That was just 7 years ago. So this issue of health professionals in healthcare is not new. Other things were being done in the meantime in regard to nurse retention. And of course, now we have the pandemic. But I know that it had to have been a difficult situation as a faculty member to know that the students that you were working so generously with would, half of them would only be staying in the profession beyond 18 months. So what we have now is a situation where we knew, I mean, in regard to my own journey in healthcare, I had my own private practice of nursing as long ago as 1986, so more than 35 years. And at that time, I knew that there would be a situation where we would have a large loss of life. I knew that people would not be able to pay their bills. I knew that there would be major changes within the profession. I didn't see the virus, and I didn't see how many of our own health professionals would be affected by these changes. I've been working now for the last 12 years with the American Holistic Nurses Association, and that organization has had the foresight to know that the pendulum has swung so far away from the human side of nursing toward only the scientific side. So now the pendulum must come back again to honor the people that are working, to help them find their true north compass inside themselves. And we see that as the resilience principles, which have been so generously offered by such people as Dr. Keith Blevins, Dr. Bill Pettit, and Sydney Banks. We've all worked together to bring this toward humanity so that all of us can have a nice life. And it almost seems too easy to say. It's a challenge oftentimes for my own fellow health practitioners to even grasp what we're doing, because it doesn't fit inside any box that we've already created. People ask me, well, what is this? And that's the challenge. That's our challenge as health professionals now, to bring out the resilience principles as we evolve and assist people in finding their own true north inside, so that the loss that they're feeling in working on a daily basis can be addressed not from external circumstances, but from an internal knowing exactly what step to take next.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I mean, what comes to mind, Lynn, is that, you know, what you and I learned early on in the 80s, that from Sid Banks, the spiritual nature of life. Is that what Florence Nightingale pointed to way back then? Is that what she, yeah, could you say more about that?
Well, she was a well-known in many different areas of life. Just for example, she, as the first nurse, wrote volumes and volumes and was connected at the highest level to people within the government of England. She saw that the district nurses would be, as she described it, missioners without a Bible. She was a mystic. She was a statistician. she actually created the blueprint for Massachusetts General Hospital. She created the layout of all of the floors at Mass General.
No kidding. Wow,
So-
I'm one state away from Massachusetts. That's interesting. So how, like the floor plan, is that what you're referring
Right.
to?
Right, the floor plan. She laid all that out. So her she just touched every area of life. When the people who came to help her in Crimea during the war needed places to live, she took care of that. When the soldiers were ill, she made sure that the windows were open so that they would get fresh air. She actually did statistical studies on different ways to treat wounds, and that's how she figured out what worked and what didn't. She was just a pioneer in so many areas of life, and we really honor her today. In fact, Teresa and I are going to be speaking at the Nursing Theory Conference that's upcoming in March. And what's unique about that is that what we're talking in regard to the resilience principles are pantheoretical. They cover all theories of nursing, all theories of psychology. We have an opportunity now to demonstrate where the holes in the other theories appear. We can answer those holes in the theories with the resilience principles.
Wow, I'd love to hear more about that. Could you be a little more specific about?
Well, it
Like
hasn't
that?
come up yet, so I think that the best thing for us to say is that we are finding ourselves in many different areas within the profession. We're planning retreats with faculty members of schools of nursing. We're working with the nurse practitioner groups on both the state and national level and local. We're working with the Organization of Nursing Leadership statewide and locally. So there's no area within nursing which won't be touched by the resilience principles. And what we're doing now is just really laying the groundwork in all of these areas. We're very, very fortunate that something has come on board described as nurse coaching. And nursing happens to be the only profession that actually offers a board certification in coaching. The very first profession to offer a board certification in coaching. So we're leading edge now, but our numbers are very small. We have only about 5,000 members, so that's only 1% of the entire nursing population in the nation, which is 4 million nurses. But nursing is the largest profession worldwide. So we have, just as an example, 4 million nurses. We have only 1 million physicians. And those numbers are the same all over the world. And of course, even before the pandemic, but certainly now, the issues of nursing are the same worldwide. So when we opened our school, we actually opened on 3 continents because our vision for nursing is so large. And what we have found is that it's not only nurses that are interested, but actually all licensed health professionals. So that's also leading edge. We have a school that is available offering the resilience principles to all licensed health professionals. Right now, we have a couple of people in Canada, audiology and speech therapy, and they are involved with our program. We want an interdisciplinary, interprofessional focus. because that is going to be the future of healthcare. It already is. And as a public health person, I've always worked interprofessionally.
Teresa or Teresa Walding.
Whoops. You know, from what I've heard, Lynn, from Dr. Pettit, you and I have been in some of his online courses, the mind, brain, body, behavior connection, and health for the helper. And what I learned from Bill is that, you know, and correct me if you have a different take on it, but I really want to know more about the resiliency factor that he's spoken of. And I think he and Dr. Mills spoke about that, which they found from Sid's explanation about the innate health that is available to everyone, except the thinking that they do that gets in the way of that if they're focused on their thinking rather than, and here comes Teresa, rather than on their innate health and well-being. So can you talk a little more about that, how resiliency, how you see it, because you call it principles
Right.
of resilience.
Right. Well, when we're talking about innate health, Dr. Pettit describes it as one cause, one cure. And he describes the cause as stress. And the cure really is finding our own resilience through the principles. So we are looking at what is natural within each of us already. That resilience has never been broken. It's never been lacking. It's never disappeared. It always is there. It's simply covered over by thought. And when we can take a step back and see ourselves as the thinker, it's our thoughts that makes up our reality.
24/7, 100% of the time, from birth to death,
Yeah.
every second. Yes.
Yes.
When people see that, it's huge for people to really recognize that. You know, on the one hand, well, that's a good thought, that's a good idea. But when people really see this, right? Isn't that your experience? That it just, it's amazing. It's like a ripple effect. Everything in their life becomes lighter and more resilient.
Yeah. Well, here's Teresa Walding. I'm just so thrilled to have her as my associate director in advancing nurse coaching. And Teresa and I have begun a new venture just this last week where we have become adjunct faculty at Texas Wesleyan University, teaching in the nurse practitioner and doctoral nurse practitioner programs. So it's a new venture for us to bring this in at the highest level of education in nursing.
Oh, it's so wonderful. And Teresa, it's so great to see you.
Thanks for having me. I didn't realize we were on already.
You know, the
I'm so
time
sorry.
difference, the time zone.
Yeah. That's okay. I'm grateful to be here, and I'll just add to the conversation as it comes up.
She wrote a beautiful little article that's going to be printed in the Natural Awakenings magazine in March. I don't know if you might like to pull some from those ideas that you wrote about, Teresa.
Sure. Let me pull something up so I can remind myself exactly what I said. You know how that works, right?
That's okay. You know, in the meantime, I'd love for either or both of you to address, like it's come up a few times already, the principles behind resilience. So I'm not sure, you know, I'm going to share this to other groups outside of our principles community. So if you'd like to talk a little bit about that, I think that would be helpful for everybody I want to share this with.
Well, Teresa, I think what you had for natural awakenings will fit that.
You know, so one of the thing about principles, and just so people who are watching this know, these principles are called mind, thought, and consciousness. And I won't go into detail about all what that means, but I'd be happy to have the conversation in the feed, in the news feed, when you post it. But it's a foundation of mental life. It's how we've always worked. And people, you know, they're like, well, I know I think. Well, yeah, we know we think. We've done it our whole lives. And yet, what does that mean to people? Well, what it really means is you only experience life, you only experience other people by what you think about them. That's principles. That's how life works. So the problems that we have in our life are what we think they are. This is how we decide what happens in the world, is based on what we think. So in that way, those principles help us. If we see that these principles are just that, our thoughts, we can actually see how other people are using these principles to create their life. It actually creates a new conversation, one we haven't had before. We're not looking at the problem and saying, well, here's the here's the problem, and then you say your perspective of the problem. Well, how many people see that the same way? Nobody. But when we know that it's our thinking about it, now we can say, oh, maybe I don't see everything about this problem, or maybe you have a different thing that I've never thought of. Well, now you have some synergy and a way to look at it from this perspective of our thoughts, our feelings. You mean like really all the time? Yes, 100% of the time. That's how it works. We not only have these thoughts, they actually manifest in our body. That feeling piece, you can't discount that. It's part of us. So this is the full experience of life. And so that, coming from that perspective, is what I wrote for this article to the New Beginnings. And I wrote, wonderful. A healthy heart starts with decreasing your stress. We have often heard that we need to decrease stress. But then the next question is, how do you do that? It's that mind-body connection, your thoughts, your feelings that create your life, and you're doing it to yourself. What? I'm not doing it to myself. It's the circumstance, it's the person. Right. So when you make that shift in your life, you're going, oh, from that perspective, I can do something. It says most people never think about how stress affects their heart, but it does. It increases the blood pressure. It can cause heart disease and other health problems. It's the perfect match in our bodies. Stress can appear as anxiety, pressured thinking, or worry. Who isn't familiar with that, right? Many people get caught up in the daily responsibility and never stop to think, how can I make life easier and decrease my stress? And then I talk about remembering that no matter where you are or what you're doing, you are the only one who can determine what a circumstance means to you. Notice that you can feel that in your heart. You can feel it as the pressure, the anxiety, whatever that is for you, you make that connection. When you make that connection, you can actually feel what your thinking is doing. Yeah. And then you're the one that's like, oh, if I'm thinking it and it's doing this, now what? You can recognize that and go a different direction. That's it. You don't have to keep staying there. It's in the noticing. There's a connection that helps you to figure out what you're doing with your thoughts and then have a new conversation.
I love that. That's wonderful. I love what Dr. Pettit says about love letters. He talks about stress as a love letter from the universe, alerting you to the fact that your thinking is getting the best of you. You don't have to change direction. You know, look for your true north, go in a different direction.
Mhm.
You don't have to keep thinking what you're thinking as though it's a reality. If it was a reality, everybody would think the same thing.
Yeah.
And no two people think exactly alike.
You know, the funny thing about what you just said was one time I was talking to Lynn in the car on the way to work, and I was having upset thinking. And she kept saying, "It's your thoughts, Teresa." And I said, "I know, but just let me be here." You know, and I heard myself and I went, "You are so silly." How, you know, it just, by the time I drove into the parking lot 2 or 3 minutes later, I sat in the car and I started laughing, because
Yeah.
how many times do we hang on to whatever that is because it feels so important, and
Yeah.
it feels like I need to pay attention to it, and the injustice of it. Who decided it was an injustice? Who decided that something needed to be done about it? But don't we hang on to that stuff and say, "Oh my God, if people would just realize that I'm right, life would be so much easier." And it's funny because I'm going to tell on myself, because I had a little problem with righteous indignation. I didn't see it, couldn't see it. I mean, literally could not see it. And it looked to me like it was someone else causing me a problem.
Yeah.
And then beyond that, it looked like, what's wrong with me? Why is that person being like that to me?
Yeah.
And Lynn talked to me. She goes, "Teresa, it's you. It's her. It's not you. It's the way she's using her thinking." And I was like, "I know, but this feels bad, and it feels like it's something I need to do." And I went to another nurse friend, and she was like, "Well, we want to keep nurses in nursing. So, you know, what can you do to drop that?" And I was like, "I don't know, because I'm still really upset about it. And by the way, it means something about me, like something that I'm not." And then Dr. Blevins got a hold of me.
No.
And I was telling him my sad story, like, you know, I wasn't consciously trying to get people to agree with me, but to see this circumstance. And I knew I was wrong. I knew in my heart that there was something in there that wasn't right, if there's a right. And so I was telling my story, and he said, "We're all friends here." And I said, yeah, we are. And he goes, "But I can tell that you have a little too much skin in the game about this circumstance." He says, "Whether it's your gall or your righteous indignation." And as soon as he said that, I was like, "Oh my God, that's exactly what it is." And it changed my life. I'm not saying like a little tiny bit. I saw places in my life from my whole entire life where that had been a problem, and I didn't know it.
Right. Right.
And that's healing you can't get from anywhere else. When these principles uncover that for you personally,
Yeah.
I've never been the same. And I continue to see insights in my life, like the most recent one yesterday. Who are you being in the world? How does that get here? That person is based on your thoughts in the moment of who you are being for everyone to see. Are you being love? Are you being frustration? Are you being righteous? That's what you're doing in the world when you're living in that kind of thinking. And I think that's why we talk about, you know, how you are in the world is what you think. That's how you bring it to the world. It's your attitude, it's your beliefs, and they're yours. You get to 100% own them.
Yeah.
And wow, I just went, okay, so that's a little different conversation than I had last week, because I saw something in myself of how I want to be in this world. And I want that with everything in my heart, for other people to see that, for me to be that, and to bring this knowledge out into the world in a way people can hear. It's the most important work in the world.
Absolutely. Oh, that was so well describe, Teresa. Thank you so much. And you know, it's so different than positive thinking. Because I
Yeah.
just am wondering if anyone listening might think that we're talking about positive thinking. That is not what we're talking about at all. Positive thinking is trying to adapt or do something. It's a doing, it's a outside in, right? What we're talking about is an inside out shift. Like when you have an insight, you see something inside yourself about how you've been using this gift of thought. And we all have times when we use it against ourselves and we're oblivious to the fact that we're using it against ourselves because it appears as though it's out there. Of course, can't you see the injustice? Can't you see what's going on? And other people can see it, but they think about it differently. Or they see something totally different. In fact, there's, you know, yeah, it's fascinating. It's so fascinating. And, you know, it's not like, even though the three of us have been around these principles, conversations about mind, thought, and consciousness for quite some time now. Lynn and I in the mid 80s, we still get caught up in our own thinking. You know, it's like never ending, but we're going to notice it, right? Wouldn't you all agree that we notice it quicker and we don't have skin in the game? It's like, yo, yeah, when we see it, when we see what we're doing, we don't have to hide from it or get embarrassed about it. It's, oh, thank you so much for pointing that out to me. I had no idea.
Or you get tired of suffering. You're like, why am I suffering? What's going on with this? And then you go, oh yeah, I got caught up in my thinking. No big deal. It's no big deal.
Was it.
You just got caught up for a minute. Yeah. And I don't know. I sort of see it now as like stepping off the path into the grass and the woods and then coming back on the path of ease. You know, you step off and you step on, and it gently guides you back to the path. When you say, oh yeah, I just got caught up in my thinking. Okay, let's move on. And you step back onto the path of ease. And oh man, there is no other place to be. We say that too. There is no other place to be, because when you see it as just a natural part of life and a natural part of the way that we use our thinking, yeah, it is not a big deal. We don't have to hang on to it. I don't have to sit in my car and talk to my friends and, you know, bring it all up and hang on to it. But, you know, I know you've experienced it, I'm sure, and I know Lynn has, the powerful feelings that come up about such things as righteous indignation or frustration. Those same powerful feelings can be joy and health and understanding and love. That's a whole lot better place to be. That doesn't mean we can choose it every day, every moment. We go back and forth, and there is no judgment of whatever is showing up. Sometimes people think, well, I only want to live on the positive side of life. Well, okay, when you find that, let me know. But I don't have it. I have the full range of emotions, and that's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
But it's knowing that these principles, that they got there because of the principles.
Yeah.
It's the perfect life in motion. And you know, you were just saying positive thinking. If I could change my thoughts, do you think I would? Sometimes I would, but I can't. I can't put it back in my mouth and spit it out in a different way. It doesn't work, but I can move forward from there and say, you know, I realize the way I had just been using my thinking was not helpful to me.
Yeah, or anybody else for that matter, right?
Or anybody else. And you can actually take a breath and pause in the midst of chaos and find that ground and move on. It's a split second. It's a split second. It's not a sit on a pillow and meditate for 30 minutes and figure it out. It's noticing and then moving from there.
Yeah, it's so true. And you know what I love? We are designed to feel our thinking.
Yeah.
because that comes to us, the feeling, that awful, irritated feeling, feeling of anger, whatever the negative feeling is, we'll catch that. And that's the signal. That's the love letter from the universe that lets us know our thinking is off. We're
Mhm.
not helping anybody, least of all ourselves, by going into how awful things are, or, why can't this person do something better?
Yeah.
Any of that.
When we're living
And
in
you know
harmony.
what else that comes to mind too, ladies, is people may hear this as, well, what are these three doing? Just sitting around twiddling their thumbs? The reverse, right? Haven't you found the reverse? That the less you go into the negativity of life and commiserate and bring it up and have to dwell there, the less I'm there, the more I accomplish.
Mhm.
The more I accomplish, the more my creativity comes out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's who you're being. That's who you brought to the equation, is that creativity.
Yeah, it's already there inside all of us. We're born to create. We're creative beings just through mind, thought, and consciousness. Those
Mhm.
principles are what allow humans to create, to know creation, and to create also.
Yeah.
And then there's this freedom and free flowing that doesn't exist when I'm caught up in some negative drama of my own making.
Yeah, and I've realized that really releasing self-criticism really is the most important part of self-care. When we're not coming down on ourselves,
Yeah.
we're able to see the next step much more clearly. I remember at one point I was being coached and I felt a shift, but I didn't know what it was until the next morning. And when I woke up, I realized that usually I would have a lot of extra thinking about, I'm going to be late. Why are you always late? You're going to be late again. And that thinking was distracting me. But this morning, when I woke up, I was completely focused. I simply did what I needed to do to get ready. I got to my appointed place and time exactly when I should be there. And it was my thinking that was holding me back. Nothing more. Nothing more. So it's such a joy for us to be here now. We are nurses in the very best place and time. There couldn't be a better time to be a nurse. And why is that? Because we are here to transform. We're here to transform health care. And that includes all licensed health professionals, all helpers. We are at work doing that now. And what it's going to look like is a tapestry. When you look at the backside of a tapestry, it looks like a bunch of strings hanging down, different colors, sizes, shapes, textures. But when you turn it over, what we see is a beautiful picture that all of us bringing our talents and our creativity together makes the new picture of the transformed healthcare that we're creating today.
Oh, that's so beautiful. What a beautiful mission and understanding. And, we're so fortunate to have been in the company of Sid Banks, and what he brought to the world in 1973 is incrementally changed so many fields, healthcare, business, psychology, psychiatry, and every single field has been impacted. And I mean, the growth is exponential now. Yeah.
aerospace and the justice system, education. It's all been touched. We can't know the scale that the principals are working on, because essentially it's going out in a very natural, a very organic way. Each of us have a part to play in that. And of course, it's going to be in our own wheelhouse, generally speaking. If I'm a nurse, it's going to look a lot like nursing. But everybody who encounters the principles find that their life changes day by day as we have new insights, as we insightfully see what is happening today, which explains oftentimes what happened yesterday or 30 years ago. And those insights are lifelong learning. We'll never lose the learning that we learn from insight. It's the way we learn to walk. It's the way we learn to ride a bike. Moving forward and balancing at the same time. When we are living in harmony with the principles, we have a life of ease. We have a life of joy. And just as Teresa said, not exclusively, we'll have our upset times too, but we'll take those in stride. And when we can know to be gentle with ourselves and that there's nothing for us to do except to take the next step, then that will be how we create our lives, and we will be living in harmony with the principles.
I'm so glad you brought that up, and also about being gentle with ourselves, because that's usually what people are the most critical of themselves and judgmental of themselves. And I'm afraid we have to stop the recording now. But I just want to thank you both for joining me. This has been such a rich conversation. I know I'm going to be meeting with you tomorrow, so we'll be continuing in that format. But I just thank you from the bottom of my heart for all the work that you are doing to bring this into the world, because it's transformative. Absolutely.
And more fun than anything.
I'd like to say one last thing to the people who are listening to this and watching.
Please.
That was a lot of information. Go back and listen to this again, and listen to it without your personal filter and just see what you can hear.
Yeah.
Listening is one of the biggest things we can do, and we're the only ones who can do it. So I invite you to listen again and take on the deeper conversation.
Yeah, beautiful that you said that. And listening through your heart, as opposed to your intellect, right? There's a deeper intelligence, that insight that both of you were referring to. It's not an intellectual process, because if you're taking notes or looking for our words, it's not in our words even. It's what each person listening will hear deep inside themselves, because everybody already knows this, but they don't know that they know it. That's what's really mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Lori, for inviting us today.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Okay.
All right. Take care.
Take care. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.